What's an experience that changed your perspective on life? Story 1: voluntarily going into a psychiatric ward to get help for my mental health. I met extremely interesting, intelligent, and creative people that were just having a hard time. It made me realize my experience with mental illness wasn't unique. For some reason, I found that comforting, and it renewed my hope a bit. Story 2: I'm a social worker and used to help families settle in the United States. One day I was taking a lady from the Democratic Republic of Congo to go get some clothes. We were stuck in traffic. I'm sitting there annoyed at how long the trip is taking. This lady puts her hands up and starts praising God and telling me that when she was back home, she had prayed so hard for these roads, these cars, all of these people. It was really a humbling and eye-opening experience. I think of her often. She made me so much more grateful for the everyday things, even the inconveniences. Story 3: I'd been suffering through some serious burnout through most of 2024. I finally had enough in September and planned to go camping off-grid. Cell coverage worked at the campsite, nowhere else, no running water, no power except a solar charger for the phone. I rented a canoe, and while paddling back to my camp, I saw a strange rock in the middle of the river. I paddled closer. It was a black bear cub, drowned, tangled up in the weeds, just under the surface. It must have just happened. It was perfectly intact. To which I said to myself, out loud in the middle of nowhere, "Don't get tangled up in the weeds, you'll drown." I stuck around another 10 days at the camp, passed the bear 3 more times on my way to other areas. It's haunted me for a while now. Story 4: I disappeared for a little under 3 years. I lived in a state forest and trespassed and stole a bunch because I thought I was beating a system meant to enslave me through debt. I was uncomfortable for a long time and realized how much it sucks to be alone. Work isn't bad and debt gives you something to build with. I'm way more positive about life now than back then, and it's because I realized that my ideals were... Story 5: I feel like breaking up with my ex-boyfriend a few weeks ago has me rethinking a lot of things in life. He was abusive numerous times throughout our 4-year relationship, but something changed a few weeks ago where I finally left for good. It's like I finally opened my eyes and thought, I deserve better than this. Story 6: getting diagnosed with a cancerous brain tumor in my early 30s and the subsequent surgery and brain damage recovery, followed by a big medical thing happening to my spouse. It sucked. It continues to not be super awesome. The cancer will eventually come back, and given the current technology, I won't live until 80, may not even make it to 70. My spouse and I had been putting off so many things for later in favor of responsibilities. No more. We're working on sneaking in fun, maybe some of the bigger treats we've had on our list for years. Story 7: everyone who has posted so far seems to pivot around something sad or terrible, so I wanted to share something positive and uplifting. I'm even considering working this into a book. Back in the mid-'80s, my mother went to a local department store, Hills, and purchased a Christmas present for me. It was a Commodore 64, and if I write that story someday, I'll be able to give an exact date because I still have the receipt. My story will center around that minute on the receipt because it changed my life forever. You see, that year, all I wanted was a Commodore VIC-20. It was a vastly inferior computer to the one she got me, and it would have been ignored by me within a few months. The Commodore 64, however, brought me years of playing, learning, and community building. I made friends across my area who shared my nerdy interests. I got to learn their school districts and their small towns when I visited them. Over time, my online-to-real friends numbered as high as my friends from school. As I grew older, this led to adventures, girlfriends, and bars, one of which gave me a job as a bouncer. And that's where I met my future wife. The guys in my wedding, all but one, I met via the modem on the back of my C64. I got my first career-level job working on computers. I started a business with a friend I met online. We ran it for 2 decades. My mom, in the 80s, that minute, that decision, changed everything. If a time traveler wants to undo my life, going to Hill's Dep store in Ross Driver, Pennsylvania on that December day and telling my mom, the Texas Instruments computer is better, would be all it takes. Story 8: I was 20 when Hurricane Katrina hit. I lived in Baton Rouge and spent a year helping friends, family, and strangers deal with losing everything. I saw a lot of people come apart when they lost their stuff, marriages that were gone because they didn't have there anymore. It changed how I looked at people and myself. Story 9: when my wife got fired for being pregnant. She worked in the finance department and was one of their best employees, always got top performance reviews. After 5 YRs there, she told them she was 3 months. 3 days later, she was laid off, but just her no one else was let go. Ever talk to someone and they say something like, but they can't do that? Well, guess what? They can. Sure, it's illegal, unethical, and plain wrong, but they can do it. Their can might ruin everything, but they can still do it. Story 10. Honestly, it was seeing Trump get reelected. I used to believe that the majority of people are generally good, and that democracy, while messy, is the right path toward a better world. But to see such a person, who is so utterly and so obviously the worst of us, be actively and democratically selected by a majority to be the one to lead us, again, after all the past 10 years, simply broke me. I just find it hard to give a about people anymore. Story 11. When I finally started getting trauma-specific therapy for my complex PTSD, for the first time in my life, I really started to understand myself. It also helps me understand the other people in my life who also have CPTSD a lot more, like my parents. I've also started to forgive myself for my past mistakes and the things I did that I used to needlessly blame myself for, like staying in an abusive situation for so long. Finally starting to heal has been a game changer for my life. It was too late to save my marriage, but I'm forging ahead with my new life. My mental health now is better than it has been for a long time. Story 12. Last summer, I volunteered at a shelter for people experiencing homelessness. I went in thinking I'd just be helping out with meals and stuff, but I ended up having these really deep conversations with people there. Hearing their stories, like how quickly life can spiral because of one medical bill or losing a job, made me realize how much I take for granted. It completely changed how I see privilege and the importance of empathy. Honestly, it stuck with me in a big way. Story 13. Maybe not as profound as others, but I was raised upper middle class. Pretty well off. Not spoiled wealthy, but also went to summer camp, had a pool, got what I wanted for Christmas. My dad took me and the daughter of a work associate who was my age out to lunch. We went to Olive Garden. We went to Olive Garden a lot. The girl was amazed. "Do you come here a lot?" "We usually just go to Hot Dog Heaven for lunch." That was the moment I realized I was privileged. I didn't want to make her feel bad, so I said it was a special occasion since I had a friend with us. But I always made sure to pay attention and be appreciative after that. Story 14. I was a fat but muscular kid who got picked on a lot. Then I grew to 6'3", got leaner, and learned how to fight. I thought that what I was supposed to do is show them all and become the bully myself. Then one day as I was leaving school, I saw a kid I'd been picking on crying in his mom's car with the windows down. I could hear him saying how he never wanted to come back to school, how he thought he'd never have friends, and basically as miserable could get. And I realized I was the cause of part of it. I felt like I had to throw up, and I decided then and there to just avoid him for the rest of the year. Never bullied anyone again if I could help it ever since. Story 15. I worked at a grocery store that had one of the random shooting events that they often talk about in the news. I wasn't working the night that it happened, but it still has had a very large effect on my experience in life. The shooter comes into the store at about 9 p.m., walks around until about 9:45 p.m., and shoots one of the night shift workers at random and a lady who was just stopping in to get groceries. Cops were called and responded very quickly. The shooter was holding a manager at gunpoint when the cops arrived and shot him before he could kill the manager. The shooter never had any defined motive. He never asked for money. It wasn't a robbery. And he came with weapons prepared to kill people. I was shook to my core about the experience. Life felt really strange. I'd never felt guilty for being alive before. I wasn't there that night, but I just easily could have been me who got shot and killed. It took me 2 months to find some sense of normal, and even then it wasn't the same. That experience really changed me. Before that, I was much more outgoing and cheerful. Now I feel miserable, and I could care less about other people. I don't know what sparked the change other than a desire to find more self-reliance. I feel like I'm walking on a circular road among the damned, waiting for my turn to find the end. I don't know what to say or do anymore. Story 16. Brother passes in a freak heart failure. He was in excellent health, just dropped at 24. Spent time doing CPR on him while we waited for the ambulance. Only solace is it was instant and not painful. Everything is now pre or post his death. Now 2 years later, my dad was diagnosed with a rare blood cancer, actively fighting it. Life is too short, unexpected, and scary, so live each day fully and laugh always. Sounds corny, but damn is it true. Story 17. Being sent to war young. It really changed my perspective on everything. I couldn't relate to any of my peers' problems when I got back because, honestly, getting in trouble at work for being on the phone or being short on rent because you didn't go into work because you were hungover are total first world problems. And I was just glad to have hot water to shower with daily, not get woke up at 2 a.m. to air raid sirens, and go to college full-time for free. To this day, I don't take anything I have for granted. I don't relate to many people, and I don't fear death, because I already lived through hell. Story 18. My dad had a heart attack and went into cardiac arrest, then also had a stroke in July of 2023. He was intubated and sedated for 1 month and 2 days with nothing but a bad outlook from every doctor who saw him. From the suggestion of moving him to hospice, estimating him being down for at least 20 minutes, him not responding to any sort of stimuli when he made it to the ER, to telling us he had a TBI and may never wake up. And if he ever did wake up, he would never be the same. 2 months and 25 days later after his heart attack, he walked out of a rehab facility. It is now a year and a half later, and you would never know he went through any of that. He didn't have a single lasting effect. I know without a shadow of a doubt, some was divine intervention there. I have not and will never look at life the way I did prior to that experience. I talk to my parents every single day. I visit a lot more, and I thank God every day. Story 19. I credit the Marine Corps with making me the man I am today and imparting on me both positive and negative lessons on a personal and professional level. I'll be the first to admit that I wasn't an amazing model Marine, and I didn't have a great enlistment, but I don't hate the Marine Corps as an institution. The Marine Corps, for the large part, treated me okay. It was just individuals who didn't form the majority of Marines in my unit, who ruined a lot for people. Getting a permanent injury while on AD was a particularly huge wake-up call and eye-opener. Before my injury, I always looked at injured Marines with pity, like, damn bro, I actually feel bad for you. But it didn't truly hit me how debilitating my injury was until I couldn't do stuff like train or PT or whatever. I'm in college now, and I genuinely believe that the Marine Corps set me up for success, seeing as I made Dean's List. Not only because of the GI Bill and disability pay, but just in terms of my attitude and views on the simple stuff like showing up to class early or turning in my work on time. Story 20. Seeing my mother descend into dementia. I was the only sibling that lived close by enough to see to her needs and get her prepared to move into memory care. I spent more time with her in those few months than I had since I lived at home as a kid. I didn't think I had it in me to deal with that. I'm still a knucklehead who goes to raves all the time in my 50s. But I stepped up. Mentally, it did a number on me, but I feel like I did the right things when it mattered, and my stock among the rest of my family went up 1,000%. Story 21. My seeing how life is precious. I was away from my family from about 694 until about early 2017, mostly my ex-husband gaslighting me on them. I spent a few good years my dad and sister after that. Dad was officially diagnosed dementia in late August 2021. My sister made sure that POA and trust documents were in place a week before his official diagnosis. Even though she was the primary caretaker along her husband, my nephew and in-law nephew, I did my best to help when I could. That 2 a.m. call on December 23, 21 is something I won't forget for a very long time. I wanted to cry then, but couldn't because I was expecting that call. Fast forward a week after Dad died, I'm at the laundromat, and I hear some guy playing Christian music. The floodgates open, and I started bawling. I'm glad the guy was kind enough to share his story of his brother's death. I'm seriously crying as I write this out. I mentally thank that guy for his compassion when I needed it the most. Story 22. A few years ago, I lost a longtime friend of mine in a car accident. He fell asleep at the wheel on the interstate and crossed over into oncoming traffic, hitting a semi. We had known each other since we were 5 and went through grade school, middle school, and high school together. He was 25 when he passed. I knew he had struggled with depression for a long time, but at the time of his passing, he was actually in a really good place in his life. He was doing what he loved and had been dating a girl for a few years. He was happy. So it really made me think, if I were to suddenly be gone tomorrow, am I happy with where I'm at? I wasn't, and I started to make a lot of life changes after that. I'd been overweight for a long time and started working on my health, and I've lost around 85 pounds since then. I got into a career I love and enjoy doing every day. I stopped stressing about stupid things too. It's not worth it. I tell my family and friends I love them a lot more frequently than I used to, and I always make sure I get enough sleep before I have a long drive to make. Story 23. I had a really bad illness, resulting in surgeries, months of hospitalizations, unending massive pain, and some mild depression during recovery. I'm 80% better, a decade post-trauma. I used to not be able to empathize when elderly people, I'm not one, would say they were just tired and ready to die. Used to think, no, every minute is precious. You must fight and struggle for every minute of life you have, if necessary. I still believe every minute of life is precious, but I understand now someone suffering from illness and just wanting it to be over. There really is a tiredness that can make one long for death's release. Don't mean to sound morbid. I was in so much pain, I would just beg God to go ahead and kill me. I would tell my family, I'm just tired of hurting. Thankful to God I made it through that long recovery. Changed my perspective on elderly people being ready to die. Also, it was an experience that was so painful for months on end, I had to take horse tranquilizer level meds to function. But it drew me closer to God. I wouldn't wish the experience on my worst enemy, and I wouldn't trade the experience for anything in the world. Story 24. I was in high school physics class around the time that the Higgs boson was about to be discovered. I remember talking with my physics teacher about it, about how exciting it was. She said something along the lines of, yeah, kinda, but it would be more exciting if we didn't find it. If it's there, we're basically ticking a box that we already figured out. But if it wasn't there, then we need to reevaluate what we know, and that would be exciting. That conversation taught me to be okay with being wrong and to actively seek new perspectives to challenge what I think I know. Story 25. Getting high at a music festival. My buddy and I got hungry, so we got chicken strips. We sat down on the dirty ground and enjoyed our chicken strips amongst other festival goers. I realized how nothing is more important than being somewhere you love with people you love. No fancy restaurant, no expensive food, no flashy jewelry, just my bud and I having a blast. We'll never forget that. Story 26. Being jilted by a girlfriend who was, at the very least, being controlling and toxic, trying to stop me from going to a drama group because of other girls, stringing me along, cheating on me, and as mentioned, jilting me. Upshot is, I now know what my boundaries are, and to quote Kate Atkinson, I have now been hard-boiled in vinegar. Another perk is being able to recognize warning signs from a mile away, which can come in very handy indeed. Fortunately, I haven't needed to use these in a little bit, but they're good skills to have in your back pocket. Story 27. People can mask very well to make others like the fake side of them. I've been in a few situations where I've interacted with people one-on-one, and they show a very less than pleasant personality, but turn that switch on when interacting with managers, the public, friends, and people they want to impress. Made me very cautious with who I invest my time and energy in. Story 28. This last election cycle, I lost all faith in the American public. 73M or so voted for this guy, and another 70M or so decided to stay home. Now we're proper ed probably for at least the rest of my life. I lost what little empathy I had. I'm done. Now I'm jaded, angry, and I'm just going to be selfish and only look out for myself. Millions without insurance, old people having their Medicaid care and SS cut. What little was keeping our education system gone. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of unwanted children forced to be born. Oh well, can't have a woman in charge. Story 29. Getting hospitalized when I developed Wernicke's in my second pregnancy, becoming temporarily bedridden. I suddenly saw everything in black and white. I genuinely was afraid to go to sleep because I thought I wouldn't wake back up. I now don't have the same fears I used to have. I'm not afraid of people's opinions of me because when I was lying in that hospital bed, when I felt like I was on the brink of death, no one else was going to die with me. As many opinions as people give, as introverted as I used to be, I realized that it was all for nothing. My life is only my own. It doesn't belong to any other human being. And now I look at that in a positive light. I see all that life can be now that I'm living it for myself. I almost can't believe how susceptible I was to other people's opinions, and I'm never going back to being that person. If you're like how I was, I really encourage you to grasp this concept, even without a tragedy happening to you. We come into this world alone, and we leave it alone, and our journeys are only our own. Choose not to live in fear, and make the choices that you'll be proud of. Story 30. Backpacking around Europe for 3 months right after college, which sparked something in me. Before that, I always envisioned myself getting a stable job, finding a spouse, settling down, having kids, etc. You know, the regular well-worn path. During that trip, I met people in gap years traveling for at least a year, and digital nomads before it became a thing. I've moved around since then. Lived in Australia, the UK, now in the US. I'm from Canada. It's a double-edged sword. While it's exciting, I feel like I'm afraid of lifelong commitments because of it, and it's screwing me up. I feel like I'm scared of being trapped in a dead-end job I don't like, being trapped in a relationship with someone I don't really love and have zero passion for, being trapped living in a city I don't really feel at home at. While deep down I want stability and meet the love of my life and go live happily ever after, I get anxious wondering if that's really something I want in life. A lot of people thought I was crazy when I quit the job I got after college in Canada, which provided a really good pension plan, defined benefit, that is hard to come by, to live a nomadic life. I seemed to have it all at the time. A stable job, a condo I bought when I was 23, someone I was seeing, etc. A part of me sometimes wonders where my life would be now if I never left that job or that city in Canada, and would I be happier because of it? I chose a different path because I was chasing after that spark I felt when I went on that backpacking trip, that feeling of being truly alive and not knowing where life would take you, and the random people you meet along the way. I have no regrets so far, but sometimes I wonder, what if? Story 31. Having the first guy I tried to befriend in college tell me he wanted nothing more to do with me had quite the impact. The part that bothers me is that he decided to break it up over winter break. He then refused a video game I tried to gift him on Steam and did not return any messages. I only got the bad news when I sat down to talk to him in the new semester. Story 32. I'll give you two. The first was when I attempted to eat an entire box of ding-dongs. I got the shakes and very, very sick. I saw a girl about to eat a plum, and I paid her money for it. Not even kidding. The second, I had been eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for about a month straight. I was in college. These things happen. Anyway, I had a little bit of cash put together, so a buddy and I went to TGI Fridays. The waiter came, and as I was ordering my food, for some reason, inexplicably, I had to have a salad. My friend looked at me like I had grown a second head. He demanded explanations. There were none, so I ate the salad. Literal chills started racing up and down my spine. It was like a religious experience. So I told my friend to order a salad. He was understandably concerned at this point. Why was this important all of a sudden? What's the deal with the salad? I said order a salad. We still talk about it sometimes. That was 15 years ago. So the moral of the story is don't eat so many sweets and vegetables are a required part of your diet. Story 33. Going away to college. I'm still youngish, but I'm always grateful that I had the opportunity. If I stayed going to CC, it would have been like high school all over again. I needed to meet new people and be away from my family. I met some very cool people, a few I can call my friends for life. I had some close calls with alcohol, and I didn't go to a very nice city, and I had almost been jumped a few times. Had a cool internship and partied, but also had heartbreaks and betrayals. But the independence and character development was incredible. I've left it much more open-minded. Now I'm back in my hometown, but I'm glad for all the good and bad experiences I had because I see so many people who stayed and they still hang out with the exact same people. Nothing wrong with that, but they refuse to leave their bubble and will likely stay the same forever. Story 34. My best friend's 12-year-old sister dying of brain cancer. This was almost a year ago. I was 14 and had known my best friend and her sister for 8 years. Her sister was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. I was one of the first people to see the signs of this, and I had no idea. She was touring her new middle school, and I was trying to show her how to unlock a combination lock, and she couldn't tell left from right. I chalked it up to new school jitters. I was so wrong. 2 weeks later, I got the news. Over the next 11 months, I watched her slowly go from a vibrant young girl to a wheelchair-bound vegetable. The worst thing was that this particular tumor left all your cognitive functions intact, but left your body to wither away. She died soon after her 12th birthday. I not only bore witness to someone who was practically my sister slowly die, I watched my best friend, who to me was my sister, cope with her sister dying. It was one of the worst things I've ever experienced. The funeral left me depressed for weeks. TLDR, I watched my best friend's little sister die over a period of 11 months. Story 35, spider bit me 5 times. This actually was a Peter Parker type moment, genuinely was. Because that spider just happened to have a necrotoxic venom. Nearly positive it wasn't a brown recluse due to where I lived at the time, but never actually saw it, so who knows? So this spider, that bit me 5 times, 5 distinct bite marks from something roughly spider-sized, ducks out into the night. Meanwhile, my Peter Parker moment doesn't give me super strength. It doesn't let me climb walls. It doesn't let me shoot weird web goo out of anywhere I couldn't already shoot sticky goo out of before. No, it gives me a much, much, much greater understanding of pain. Here's where we talk about what I mentioned earlier. Necrotoxic venom. That's that some animals have, and when they bite you, that part of you dies. That's it. That part they just bit dies, like flat out dies. Some are worse than others. When a rattlesnake bites you, that's pretty bad. That's a lot of venom. A lot of you is probably going to die if you don't take care of that right away. Spiders are tiny. They bite insects or perhaps small rodents if they are feeling ambitious. This one bit a 20-year-old human, and then for good measure did it again 4 more times. This isn't an arm rotting off as if it were a rattlesnake bite. This is patches of skin and flesh slowly turning black, literally melting, and just running down the side of your body if left alone. And that's what happened. I mean, I didn't leave it alone. I got to clean up after the rotting flesh, but the rotting flesh part happened. People, friends, and family were grossed out, but it still happened. Imagine your skin and the muscle and fat beneath it just slowly liquefying and running down your side like butter off an ear of corn. Then imagine what that might feel like. I've got a slightly skewed sense of pain from other people as a result, to the point that I later got a 3rd-degree burn on my arm and didn't even flinch. I'm not trying to brag. It's not about that. It's about sitting there, helpless, while your flesh melts off from some random thing that bit you in the night, and living with your literal nerves literally exposed to open air and saying, you know what? I'm not going to kill myself right now. Let's just bear this one out. It taught me what pain really is, what suffering really is. It made me able to take a better recognition of life. If you can't, then you can't. If you're done, then you're done. I'm not judging. It just reset the 0 point for me personally. Story 36. We went to our hometown in June 2018. My grandpa was still there, and I don't know why, but I didn't really think to spend much time with him. I just enjoyed the stay, hung out with my younger cousins, and went around the city to sightsee and just have fun. We went back home, and not even 2 months later, he was gone. Made me rethink my priorities. Don't take the people around you for granted. Story 37. Honestly, I'd say it was when I went through a pretty tough breakup. I mean, at first it felt like the world was ending. But then I started focusing more on myself, my goals, and what I actually wanted. I realized that sometimes life's curveballs can teach you more about who you are and what truly matters than any smooth ride ever could. It just completely shifted my perspective on being independent and learning to enjoy my own company. Story 38, divorce. Even if you've known someone for your entire adult life and you think you know someone better than anyone else, you don't. You really don't. Also, if you've got small kids, be careful with them. I had a coworker who lived in a nice neighborhood that just happened to be close to a highway under construction. Last summer, like September, she let her older son, 16, and her younger son, 8, walk to the Walgreens near their house, which was across the highway at dusk. As they were crossing the highway, the younger son got hit by a car and will be affected for the rest of his life because their mother chose to let them cross the highway at dusk. There is no crosswalk, and aside from lighting for the commercial business areas along the highway, restaurants and such, no real lighting. So chances are the driver didn't even see the poor kid till it was too late because it was getting dark out. You'd think that, given that this highway has stoplights and is near several schools, including an elementary, they'd have crosswalks, but no, they don't. I can't tell you how many times I've seen kids, teenagers mostly, risking their damn lives to cross the road to get to their homes on the other side or to get to a fast food place or whatever, on the opposite side from their school. Story 39. Dog teeth just missing the corner of my lip and just catching above my eyeball, saving my vision and speech while being attacked. 100 plus stitches to the face/head, done by a plastic surgeon that day without having to schedule something when one became available. The amount of horror stories I hear of people having terrible scars from an accident. I wasn't sure of the outcome. It was a few-year healing journey, and mine are all over my face. Most visible still is the one huge one running from the middle of my cheek to the corner or my mouth, like Joker scar but real, and I am forever grateful to come out as healed as I have. Life can change in the blink of an eye. This was over 12 years ago now, and I think back on this moment often and think about how grateful I am for my life. Things could have turned out so differently, but I am happy where I am now, and that grounds me. Story 41. I unintentionally saved a life. I'm a socially anxious person, and I'm terrible at keeping up with people because I'm convinced everyone just tolerates me at best. Years ago, I noticed a foreign friend's posts had been showing up in me feed a lot and were getting progressively darker, and that they were exclusively in English, which wasn't Huss' first language. It was clear that he was struggling, so I convinced myself to reach out. He vented for a while, and we had a pleasant conversation about life, toys, and heavy metal, which were the things that brought us together in the first place. I saw him online a little while later and hit him up to check in. He told me that things had gotten much better already, then hit me with some truth that I wasn't ready to process. He was planning to end his life, but our conversation changed his mind. He thanked me for saving him. Since that time, I've made it a point to try to reach out more if I see signs of people struggling. At the very least, I try to be more positive and encouraging in my conversations, even when I'm struggling myself. Story 42. I traveled a lot early in my career. I spent a lot of time in quite a few poor countries. The worst was Haiti. I worked near a poor area. People would beg and beg for the scrap lumber from our shipping crates to build their houses. When they built a house, it was about the size of the walk-in closet in the first home my wife and I bought. They would get their water from a community well. The water that came from the well looked more like someone stomped around in a mud puddle along the side of the road and took a glass of the resulting brown water to drink. My driver explained to us how the poor ate dirt. There was bad dirt to eat and good dirt to eat. I never asked what made dirt bad or good to eat. They explained they would add some fat and make like a small pancake and eat it. I went to Haiti 6 times in my life to work. The poverty and corruption was like nothing I had ever seen before or really since. Ever since then, I have never complained. I have a nice house. Nothing extravagant, but it is a nice house. I have money to put food on the table. I have multiple grocery stores within a 10-minute drive from me, and I can buy anything I want to eat. I have a job that pays well, and I enjoy working it. I don't let the inconveniences of life bring me down. If I feel sorry for myself about something, I remember the really poor people I have come across in my travels, as opposed to what I call American poor, and I'm instantly thankful for what I have. Story 43. Really bad ski accident. Don't remember 5 days of my life. Scared everyone I was with, family, friends, GF, and most importantly, my kid. My mom said she left work to go home and pack because doctors were telling her I had a high chance of not making it. Hearing her say that really changed how I took precaution doing things and how me being gone would really impact everyone around me, and the thought of my kid growing up without a father really impacted me. I'm thankful every day that I am here and have another chance. Story 44. I accepted a new job and was flown to another state for 2 weeks of classes, training. It was my first time being away from my inner sphere for any length of time, and the first time people treated me as an adult. I built up a lot of confidence in that short period of time and realized others were keeping me down, that I was keeping myself down as well to meet their expectations. The whole trip was very liberating. Story 45. The first time I got to trade being the guy in front of the class public speaking for the role of being the guy writing what people say on the board. There are a lot less people afraid of writing on the board as there is public speaking, so you can always find someone to take you up on the offer. You get practice a great skill, and you get to hide the fact that you are dyslexic until you learn all the coping skills you need. Story 46. My father's death changed my entire perspective on my parents in childhood, especially after hearing everybody talk about what a great man he was and how much he loved us. The only thing I had remembered growing up was him never being home, and when he was home, he was saying no to stuff or getting drunk. Then he only started talking to us when he needed something when we were older. I never knew how bad he was suffering with depression and working his ass off to provide for us. I defiantly have a better perspective of him now that he's gone, and it's helped me get over my issues with mom as well. Story 47, I've had a few of these. Age 8, I was in a mental institute, 1988 before ADA, so there was no time limit to be there. It had been months at that point. Tired one morning and didn't do hospital tuck of my bed and just wanted to go get breakfast. I was scolded and had to sit in a chair facing the wall in the middle of the hallway so everyone could see me, but I couldn't participate in anything or eat until I was done filling out some paperwork on a clipboard. The first page was about lying, which I did do because I was tired and hungry and didn't see the point of how a bed sheet should be tucked in. But the second page was a different color and had to do with cheating. At that moment, I realized that adults were lazy and would just make you do whatever paperwork they handed you. I figured that they were supposed to look at the papers and only give me the correct one, but couldn't be asked. Age 15. I learned I'm not alone, and other people also don't have anyone that loves them. I was in a type of education where we were at the normal high school, but in a portable on the outside of the school where the real people wouldn't have to look at or know about us. I heard a few things from my fellow students about their own abuse. Age 16. I learned that the school system isn't there to help you. A special education teacher I had said I was a horrible person and didn't deserve to have friends at school, home, or when I got old enough to work, at work. I was very hurt and went to the school counselor and reported her. The counselor said she'd look into it. She summoned me a few days later and said she spoke to the teacher, who admitted everything. But since it was her last year teaching before she retired, she wasn't going to do anything about it. Age 30-something. Realized that the emergency system, 911, isn't there to help most of the time. If it's a case they're actively pursuing, police, fire, and they've come to you for info, they might listen unless you're mentally ill or cognitively disabled. But if you go to them, they not only won't listen, but if someone else tells them about the same crime, they won't listen to whoever that is either. It's how my cousin is a serial killer who will never be caught. He was arrested once because he tried to decapitate someone when they walked away to de-escalate. Don't show your back to a psychopathic meth fiend, kids. And I contacted his arresting detective while he was still in jail to let him know it wasn't an isolated incident, but it was pretty obvious he wasn't listening or taking down any notes based on his lackadaisical attitude. Cousin got out of jail shortly after. Age 43. Found out my mother never went to college, except to find people to scam. She had gotten to a very high career position in a Fortune 500 inches company, but apparently no one at any of the jobs she had ever bothered to check the education she said she had. Same day, I found out that the aunt that was her friend from college wasn't from college, but high school, because that aunt told me she dropped out to be a hooker paid in, and that's who my babysitter had always been. I do still talk to that aunt. No one else I've ever been told was family or confirmed biological family, though. There's a lot of other stuff leading up to these epiphanies, but I think that's enough for one question. Story 48. Start of second year at uni. An entire year of getting treated like a doormat by women I was dating had just culminated in my being dumped by my latest girlfriend on the very day we were back in town together after the summer holidays. I'd been chivalrous, as I'd been raised to be. I'd been a real gentleman, and I'd been sweet as cherry pie to every woman I dated, and I got walked all over and treated atrociously by every one of them. And now, after holding out for my latest girlfriend in a 10-week absence, I'd been dumped good and hard the first time we met up again. I felt something change in me that night. It wasn't a comfortable feeling, knowing that how I'd been brought up was alienating me from romantic partners. It was disillusioning and dispiriting to realize that my values were viewed by others with ridicule and contempt, that I could be cheated on or strung along or ghosted without mercy. I changed that night. Something inside me took the next step forwards. I started to go to less effort to be considerate, deferential, idealistic, eager to please, and respectful with women I met. I started to be more flippant, cheeky, cynical, and unavailable. Within a few months, my life took off. I had a string of satisfying conquests, and I never looked back. My only regret is that I didn't wise up sooner and relate to women how they actually are, rather than try to make myself and others fit some unrealistic model of how human beings relate to each other. Story 49. My last relationship, both pros and cons. When we were together, we forgot everything and went into a dream just to realize at the end of our weekends together that we had to go back to reality. Going back to reality always hit me hard, because it told me in the back of my head that this relationship has no future and will not work. It's not meant to be, even though we truly loved each other. I didn't want to lose him. I still wanted him to be a part of my life, but there was no solution for it. I realized that we are very shaped from our surroundings as human beings without noticing it. After this relationship, it's like I woke up and started to despise my reality, but at the same time, I'm stuck in it, and some of the people in it are still people I love and shared life with in some way, but don't want to be around anymore. I feel imprisoned sometimes, lonely, with nowhere to go, no path to evolve, even though I'm an independent adult with opportunities. He tried and tried to give me that opportunity, but I couldn't take it knowing that I would risk all my good reputation I've built all my life. I was ashamed of my relationship, ashamed of who I was with him, but I've never met a better man than him. I'll probably never know if I made the right choice until it's too late. Anyways, the feelings for him aren't intense anymore, and I'm thankful for that, but I will never forget him. Life moves on, it's true. Hold on to the good memories and never lose yourself. Your mentality comes first. Story 50. I stayed in a toxic sports program in college for an extra year because I wanted to A, prove myself worthy of being on the court and actually make it happen, and B, earn the respect from my teammates and coaches. I learned that no matter how much good intention you have and how hard you work and bust your ass and prove yourself, at Naruto, you can still fall short of your dreams. Most people are actually waiting to see you fall and will prey on your downfall. As I coped with the reality of my dreams never coming true, they still might. I won't lose hope. I realized that the situations and people you place above you will determine whether or not you can reach your goal. You can give them the red button to make you unhappy. Do everything in your power to convince them to not press it. But if it benefits them, they've already slammed that button. I learned that while they may have taken a dream from me, I can simply create another one. They may have torn down my spirit, but I can rebuild it myself and carry on. They make me feel stuck. I crawl out of the abyss and find somewhere else that won't consume me. I wasted time looking for their approval and love. It never came, but I got my own approval and my own love, and whether or not they allowed my hard work and dedication to be put to use, it was shining in a way no one could ignore. I left my mark and earned my respect, so while they didn't give me respect, I proved that I was still standing after everything they threw at me. I proved that I was something, even if no one else around wanted to see it. I showed them and myself.